On This Week in Enterprise Tech, it's DEF CON, dirt boxes, shimmers, and skimmers. It's Wyatt on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Wyatt, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 203, recorded August 12, 2016 for August 19, 2016, the moving episode. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Igloo Software. Igloo is an intranet you'll actually like. It connects people with the information that they need to do their best work. Try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit or sign up for a live demo to see it in action. Welcome to Wyatt, This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I'm not going to guide you by myself. For that, I'm going to need a little help from my friends, starting with Mr. Brian Chee. He is the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii, who has a new little gadget that looks a little bit like something I saw at NAB. Cheebert, what is that?
This is the Shure MVI, and I've got the Lightning connector on it, and it works beautifully with my MEVO camera. So I can actually get digital up until my iPad and use it for Skype and whatever's.
I think that's a nice little bit of kit, perfect for people who travel. So will we be seeing you in high def around the world?
One can only hope.
One can only hope. One can also only hope that the next guest stays with us for a very long time. He is the very talented, the very handsome, the very suave and debonair Lou Maresca. He is a senior engineering manager at Microsoft in their fabulous Dynamics department. You know, CRM, the one that makes them all of that money. Lou, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a great day here and a day off, too, so I'm doing great.
Wait, you had a day off?
Yeah.
No, this will not stand. No, I'm going to have to call them up because that should never, ever happen, folks. We are busy people here at Wyatt. Well, we've got an interesting show because you can see behind me that, we're in the process of taking down the studio. We are doing our move next week. So this is actually pre-recorded. This will be one of the only times that we will acknowledge that an episode is being pre-recorded because we will not have a studio come next Friday. We'll be getting wired into the new place on the other side of Petaluma, California. So we thought we should probably do a little recap. We're going to take you back to DEF CON, to Black Hat, and show you some of the more interesting stories that I found while I was at the show, and just enjoy the geekness that is Wyatt. But gentlemen, before we do that, why don't we go ahead and jump into the blips? Well, did you go to DEF CON this year? Did you turn on your phone, any of your wireless devices? Because if you did, congratulations, the chances are that you have been owned. For years, veteran DEF CON goers have been warned against turning on any wireless technologies, but people still do it. And this year, it's not just anecdotal evidence that you've been owned, it's proof. Security researcher Jeffrey Vaughn did a scan of the Las Vegas Strip days before Black Hat DEF CON and found 8 GSM towers in range of Bally's and Paris, where DEF CON was to be held. When he did another scan on the day DEF CON opened, he found 38 in the same area. While some of those can be reasonably explained, such a dramatic increase in the number of towers seems to suggest that at least a few IMSI catchers were in play. Still, it was DEF CON, so just follow standard post-con procedures, which means changing all your passwords, reformatting any devices that were powered on during the show, then set everything on fire and take a long, hot shower in bleach.
Remember that professional network called LinkedIn where you put all your professional data you use to link to other professionals in your social graph? Well, bots are attacking. Per a recent suit filed by LinkedIn, has subject to a massive bot attack, scraping large amounts of users' professional data from their profiles. If you've used LinkedIn in the past, normally you have access to peruse profiles and view data, which some profiles actually limit access to their data based on whether you're in their graph or not, or if it's made public or not. The reason for the suit is that the attackers performed a bot attack utilizing 6 LinkedIn cybersecurity systems and whitelisted services from popular and reputable service providers such as search engines and other platforms to get around the normal API limitations and profile privacy and blocked limitations. LinkedIn said that the complaint that it had tracked internet providers, internet networks, and IP addresses it believes are associated with the attack. The attack is still under investigation, and they're moving fast to try to find the root offenders.
Some people still don't get it. And the TSA just found a mega bad in someone's carry-on luggage. Gizmodo is following the TSA on Instagram, where they post photos of stuff that brain-dead passengers forget in their carry-ons. However, recently, someone tried to sneak on a 3D printed gun with live rounds. Oh my.
Twitch and YouTube prove that people who want to watch other people's games is big business. Now, Microsoft is betting that those same people will want to watch and participate in those games. Yesterday, Microsoft's Xbox Group announced the acquisition of Beam, a 24-employee Seattle-based company created by 18-year-old Matt Sasmandi. Beam streams gameplay while also giving viewers quests and challenges that can affect the gameplay of the streamer. Beam currently has more than 100,000 users, and Microsoft hopes that the acquisition will fuel their Xbox growth strategy while also giving them the option of expanding the service across Microsoft's product line. The deal will allow Beam to expand much more quickly and give Microsoft a toe in to a market that includes entities like the game streaming Twitch giant, which Amazon purchased for just south of $1 billion in 2014.
Pink plus purple equals fuchsia. Google's apparently working on a mysterious OS called Fuchsia OS. With the little clues left behind in Git repositories and comments, Fuchsia looks to be a fusion of the LK kernel, which is designed for small systems like embedded systems, and the Magenta kernel, based on the little kernel base, which targets modern PCs and phones and fast modern processors. Adding to Magenta would be the first-class user mode support, necessity for user accounts, and a capability-based security model. Stipulation so far is that Fuchsia could be the potential merger of the Chrome OS and Android. The UX for the new US is basically, it looks like it's incorporating Flutter for the user interface, as well as Dart as the primary programming language. It also included mentions of Escher and a render that supports light diffusion, soft shadows, and other visual effects in OpenGL. Only time will tell whether this is the fusion of the two OSs.
Seagate reveals a 60 terabyte SSD at the Flash Memory Summit, and wowza. The bad news is you can't have it yet, even if you rob a bank to pay for it. Using Micron's 3D triple-level cell technology, this massive SSD is only set up for SAS interfaces with a dual-port 12 gigabit per second rated read rate and a stated IOPS speed in excess of 150K. Set up with a PCIe interface, this massive SSD is currently only set up for data center deployment. The rest of us will just have to wait a bit longer.
Microsoft is going after Amazon's Twitch audience in the game market, so it only seems fitting that Amazon is going after Microsoft Azure in the analytics market. At the AWS Summit in New York, Amazon announced Kinesis Analytics. It's a module in the Kinesis streaming service that will give customers real-time analytics of streaming data. This puts Amazon head-to-head with analytics giants Microsoft Azure Stream Analytics and IBM Streaming Analytics, the two players who have most established themselves as the go-to vendors for real-time analysis of everything from Uber drivers to IoT devices to location-aware advertising to credit card transactions. With Amazon in the game, it's now a three-horse race for the future of IoT, big data, deep learning, and high-availability, high-redundancy services.
Private mode, incognito mode, in private mode all have private in it when it comes to covering your tracks and web browsing for Chrome, Safari, IE, Edge, and more. But how private are they if they still leave some remnants of data on your drive? Well, Jen McEwen and Jesse Adams don't think it's private enough and created the Android browser Tenta. Adams and McEwen are actually known for their Seattle-based startup McCandy, a company that operates a marketplace for adult apps. Actually know a little bit about privacy. The recent beta that they launched this past month for Tenta encrypts everything from browser history, downloaded and local files, bookmark videos, documents, and all other media is encrypted behind a user PIN. Without the PIN, not even Tenta, the team, can access the information. One of Tenta's unique features is called Zones, where it lets users pin a collection of tabs to one location. One group of tabs could, for example, always operate as the user were in Amsterdam or Seattle. If you want to watch BBC or other London-based content, you pin the tabs to always come from London. Tenta has some potential and hopefully could integrate with some enterprise features like MDM and other base services. Only time will tell.
A new bug was announced at 25th Usenix Security Symposium. The bottom line is if you're using a website that isn't encrypted, A vulnerability was exposed that allows a certain class of hacking attack to break the connection and, if not encrypted, introduce a man-in-the-middle attack. Published by the University of California at Riverside and the U.S. Army Research Laboratory, a demonstration of this attack allowed attackers to introduce content into legitimate sites, like in this case, the USA Today website. This all revolves around RFC 5961 that has not been fully implemented in Windows and Mac OSs, and while introduced in the Linux kernel 4.7, it hasn't been rolled out in that many existing sites. The really dangerous part of this is that you no longer need to be in the middle of the stream, but can now be implemented from just about anywhere. Time to update, folks, and hope that Microsoft and Apple update their OSs really soon to be fully compliant with the RFC.
Well, that does it for the blips. Next up, we've got the bites. But before we get there, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, do you remember a time when you could only do work in the workplace? Remember when you actually had to come physically into the office, sit in your cubicle, talk to your teammates, go into the conference room, go into the break room, do all your work in the same 8-hour stretch? Well, folks, those times are gone. These days, we expect our workers to be around the world, to be out where the work actually needs to be done. And we also expect that we can give them the tools to do it properly, which is why we're so happy to have Igloo as a sponsor of the Twilight Riot. Igloo is a modern internet designed to keep everyone on the same page. You can share files, have real conversations in real time, and do it all while still being able to use the apps you currently use, like Box, Google Drive, and Skype. Igloo brings everything together and creates a single destination and lets you focus on your work rather than the tools. It's a cloud platform that helps you share files, collaborate on documents, blog updates, coordinate calendars, and manage your projects. Now, anyone can add content based on their permissions with drag and drop widgets and a WYSIWYG editor. Igloo also offers a variety of access, authentication, and identity services to ensure that only authorized users have access in private clouds over SSL and with 256-bit encryption. Unlike other solutions, you can customize Igloo to fit your needs and work with your current IT investment. There's no forklift upgrade where you have to dump everything that came before. You can use your current tools like Office 365, Salesforce, SharePoint, Active Directory, file sharing solutions like Google Drive and Box, and support systems like Zendesk. Put simply, Igloo is an intranet that you'll actually like. Sign up now and try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. That's igloosoftware.com/twit. And when you sign up through our link, you can get your own Igloo for up to 10 people absolutely free for as long as you want. That's igloosoftware.com/twit, igloosoftware.com/twit. And we thank Igloo Software for the support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's go ahead and jump into the Enterprise Bites. This one it's a little bit different, but again, this is where we're going with the enterprise. This is how the technology is changing. It's how it's forcing us out of our offices, out of our comfort zones, into something a little bit different. And in this case, it's medical devices and drones. Now, rural areas are often underserved when it comes to medical care, but that may change thanks to the work of Zipline. It's a California-based company that recently developed a drone delivery system that provides critical medical products to areas that lack roads and other infrastructures that you would normally need to get medical care to people. One delivery, one life saved. That's their logo. It's that simple. The company proclaims on its website. The drone delivery system is centered on something that they call a Zip. It's a small robotic airplane designed to carry vaccines, medicines, and blood to rural areas. Now, to handle such precious cargo, the drone is equipped with safety features that they borrowed from the commercial airliner industry that will make a remote control airplane nearly crash-free. Individual drones can carry supplies for small areas, while a fleet of Zips can provide much-needed medicines and more for millions of people. Now, Cheebert, you found this story. What was it that sort of attracted you to this? Because there are a lot of drone stories out there, be it Amazon or Microsoft or Facebook working on their fleets. What was it about Zip that you thought we needed to talk about?
I've actually been in some areas where we had an accident and we needed some penicillin or broad spectrum antibiotic in a really, really big hurry. And in the past, this just wasn't possible. You know, a lot of broad spectrum antibiotics need refrigeration, and a lot of remote places just don't have it. So what something like Zip does is it can be the difference between life and death in a lot of cases. And in our case, this would have been great because we actually ended up having to have someone parachute in with the broad spectrum antibiotics. Something like Zip would have been a lot faster, a lot easier, and safer for a lot of people. And what Zipline has done is absolutely spectacular. And I really applaud the fact that they're doing such an underserved community in rural Rwanda.
You know, what I like about this story is it's reminiscent of the whole mobile revolution that you have in places like Africa, like countries like Rwanda, where they've bypassed a whole stage of development that what we would call the first world countries have done. You know, they never went through the landline stage. They never went through slow internet connectivity over a modem stage. They kind of just stepped up straight to mobile. It's easier to deploy. And this is sort of the same thing. They understand that it would take billions upon billions of dollars to build up sufficient infrastructure to get quality medical care out into those areas. But with this, in the story, you could actually have someone on their mobile phone that does have decent connectivity with the GPS coordinates text that they need medical assistance and exactly what they need. And a drone can be dispatched traveling at 60 miles an hour and be at their position in under the hour or under the 10 minutes based on exactly where it's located. This is something that, it's fascinating to see. But Lou, let me ask you this. It might work for a place like Rwanda. It might work for countries where there is no infrastructure. But could you do this over a developed country? Could you do this over France? Could you do this over the United States? Could you do this over Russia?
I think that's a tough sell because if you think about it, a lot of these places have the infrastructure to, do the hot drops, be able to fly an airplane over top and then drop things down, even if there's no infrastructure to get to them. So I see that, these types of things in areas where there's no ability to actually, even fly a plane that can drop anything. In that sense, quickly, and also it takes longer to take off a plane and bring down a plane. So I think that these countries are perfect targets for this type of technology because drone can get off real fast. It can get to the place where it needs to be. It can drop it and it can come back, and it doesn't need, like you said, the infrastructure to be there. But I think it would be a tougher sell into the more well-developed countries that do have the infrastructure to support it.
Cheebert, I mean, this is Amazon's system, right? I mean, any of these systems, they're essentially doing the same thing. The only difference is how they approach the technology, but they are using some sort of aerial craft. Some of the more advanced ones, like Amazon's, can actually do VTOL. So they'll take off like a quadcopter, and then they'll switch into fixed-wing flight so that they can get better efficiency out of the power they have on board. But do you see this becoming a large field with a lot of players, or are we going to get to that point where there's just going to be one vendor that has really good tech, that is closed source, and they end up winning the drone delivery / drone service battle?
Actually, I think I'm going to call this the kitten picture approach. It's something that appeals to everybody. And if you've ever been in places like New Mexico and Arizona, if someone's out there and gets bit by a rattlesnake, this is something that's really necessary. But I will say, I'm pretty sure our friends at Zipline decided to go into places like Rwanda where the government said, yes, let's do this.
Right.
And they don't have an FAA to fight with.
Yeah.
But I think now that things are starting to coalesce with the FAA and, drones are no longer the bad guy, something like this could be the leverage the FAA and the drone community needs to get Congress to really get behind this. And I should say that, Zipline saying once the Rwanda operation is fully set up, Zipline is planning on providing similar services in Maryland, Nevada, and Washington.
Lou, it strikes me as we've got two pictures, two narratives approaching drones. So in the United States, drones were a toy that someone figured out how to do something useful with. They're annoying. People typically don't like them flying near them, and so that's what they associate it with. And that's why we seem to have so much trouble here. The FAA is really cracking down on who can and who cannot fly drones. There's in fact, there really is no clear path on how you fly one of these commercially unless you've got a lot of money, like an Amazon or Facebook or a Microsoft. But you go to a place like Rwanda where they didn't have that stage of drones being a toy, and now if you hear that whirring sound, that's a good thing. That means something good is happening. Something good is going to be dropped that might save a life. Is this another example of same tech, but just two different narratives because of where two different societies are?
Absolutely. There's tons of examples of this. I think this is a perfect one where, they're potentially going to even expand the technology behind drones because they're going to a location where the laws are not so restrictive, and they're using it for a particular purpose that wasn't even thought of here in the United States or in countries that kind of restrict it. And that happens a lot. I mean, you think about it, a lot of the technologies that we use today are expanded in other countries because they don't have such ridiculous, like, materials that they use in plastic bottles and some of the aluminum alloys and that type of thing was developed in countries where the restrictions on chemicals and that type of thing, production, like in China and so on, are less restrictive. And so, they create less volatile products when they put them together, but they were developed in countries that didn't necessarily have the restrictions. So this is just another example of going abroad, going beyond the need for the laws and seeing what they can actually apply and make use out of. And I really hope that it actually comes to fruition and they do well.
Right now, Cheebert is having a conversation with Chumley in the chat room, and I think we should probably bring it into the stream because it's important. Cheebert, Chumley makes a good point, which is, wait a minute, why wouldn't I just get a Cessna and shove it out the door? Or, in places that are really troubled, normally there are military aircraft, some big lifters like a C-130 that have cargo ramps that I could just drop supplies on. Why go through the expense of creating a system, a network, a mesh of drones that can be launched and get to their target within minutes, where we already have a decent infrastructure that we can use?
Well, that's true for a lot of the major cities. But if you looked at that video, Rwanda is a country of forests and deep ravines and mountains. And in a lot of places in Rwanda or Ghana or a lot of other places, there's not enough room to land a C-130. There's not enough room to land a Cessna. And the cost of running a piloted airplane, even if you own a crappy old Cessna 120, it's still going to cost you at least, I'd say, probably $30 an hour to run. If you factor in fuel, pilot, and even if it's a volunteer pilot, it costs money. Now, in the case of this drone, we're talking about an electrically powered or small engine powered drone, and the cost to operate might be as low as, say, $10 a trip instead of $10 an hour. And because it's parachuting in, not so bad. It's well packed and all that. I've actually had to pay for a fuel load on a C-130, and my comptroller just about had a heart attack. Those things are really expensive to run. So when you start talking about something that's maybe $12, $12 to do a delivery, they can do it at 60 miles an hour, not have to land, not have to have a skilled pilot. Just the economics of the delivery is pretty good. But that also means, well, if you're trying to deliver it in a war zone, say Afghanistan, now all of a sudden we can deliver whole blood, which is a rarity in the battlefield. We can deliver whole blood, rare antibiotics, snake bite venom, what you name it, even into some really, really remote areas. This is a idea that time has come, and I hope they succeed.
And by the way, riding in the back of a C-130 is really, really loud and really, really cold. And they didn't let me fly it. So I prefer drones. All right, let's go ahead and move on because we could bog down in there. But this one is a different kind of angle on flight, one that really affects our field, information technology, enterprise technology. And that is the problems that Delta has had 2 weeks ago, as of the recording of when this airs, with their flight system. Everyone knows the story by now. Delta had a little bit of a blackout in a data center that affected the computers that do all of their ticket booking and their flight scheduling, and it just cascaded. And it wasn't just until the computers came back up. It was days after that Delta was still canceling flights because of the trickle-down effect. Cheebert, you know more about the story. Exactly what happened?
Well, this is a story that Ars Technica got from a Delta airline pilot's quote. According to the flight captain of a JFK to Salt Lake City flight this morning, a routine scheduled switch to the backup generator this morning at 2:30 a.m. caused a fire that destroyed both the backup and the primary. Firefighters took a while to extinguish the fire. Power is now back up, and 400 of the 500 servers rebooted. Still waiting for the last 100 to have the whole system fully functional. I call that a mega oops. What happened to the monthly testing? And why was this? What happened with the switching gear? You know, we're switching an awful lot of power, but this is pretty well understood technology. And what happened to the hot site?
Yeah, this is interesting, and this directly affects what we do, because we invest a large chunk of our budget to disaster recovery. So we have all these plans about how we can bring a site back up, how we can bring our data back up, where things are stored off site, and power is always one of the first pieces of that. I mean, we've got generators, we've got fuel cells, we've got backup batteries. The fact that this happened, it tells me that they probably haven't done a plugs out test in a long, long time. And why would you? I mean, Cheebert, it's inconvenient. I mean, we know this. We would do this at Interop, where the last test that we would do is we would pull the power, we would drop the breaker, and we would find out exactly what happened. Did everything fail over the way it was supposed to fail over? Did the batteries actually work and kick in as expected? And for us, with a large network, but still a relatively small deployment, that was a regular part of our setup. Why don't we do that once we're actually established in our location?
I don't know. It's always interesting walking in and seeing the smokestack on the National Weather Service generator going. So that told me, one, either it was their monthly test, or two, there's been a power outage in my building. So I know people do it. I know First Hawaiian Bank and Bank of Hawaii both do it. I kind of question why Delta didn't do it, or did they and miss something? I will admit, the power differential of running the National Weather Service office versus running a 500 server data center is pretty big. And those are expensive generators to run, and they take time to fire up. They take time to stabilize. And in the meantime, your UPS and your data center has to take up that slack until the generator fully comes online. So this kind of plugs out testing is expensive. And I know that a lot of large banks will do a full generator plugs out testing, but they only do it maybe 2-3 times a year because it is that expensive. So I don't know. We know things are changing. The airline industry is much more dependent upon the IT world. Just look at that last big outage at Southwest, and that was actually a failed router. And to them, I say, gee, what happened to MPLS and self-healing networks?
Yeah, it's interesting because they have the biggest budgets. I mean, when you look at what kind of expenditures airlines put down, it is a massive amount of outlay, and they are supposed to have those self-healing networks. They're supposed to have those networks that can come back up really quickly. In fact, Lou, I want to get your input into this, because CRM and Dynamics, it's not as mission critical as, say, making sure that planes can take off and land and when they're supposed to. But you do deal with a lot of customer data. And so beyond the hardware, you have to create your servers. You have to create the service. You have to create the software to be fault tolerant. Delta's obviously wasn't, because days after they went down, they were still running incredibly slow, and they were still getting erroneous data through the network, which tells me that the software itself, it was never designed to be shut down. And when it did get shut down, it didn't know how to come back up. How do you design your software so that when it does, not if, but when it does suffer a catastrophic power outage, that it will come back up cleanly?
So a lot of times we call decoupling services or microservices, where each service kind of has its own, it's kind of isolated, does its own thing. Sometimes it has its own storage. And then, some services might need data from other services, and they kind of communicate. And the way to do that is then you could replicate them across regions. You can move them to different locations. You can put them globally, across geo. So these types of things, if you break up your service to be microservices, a lot of new services are doing this. It gives you that ability to add that redundancy and the failover capability to your system as a whole. And then, not only that, you can decouple your data from those services as well. So you have another layer of protection there as well. This is just a perfect example. I don't want to preach to the choir, but I know, this is why airlines should airline data is very useful and it's very out there. They should start moving it to the cloud, right? I think this makes it more useful for them. Most of their systems are cloud-based anyways. And they'll have the ability, they'll get all this for not necessarily free, but they get with the price of the service. And so being able to, all this cost that goes behind, backups and testing and replication, all this stuff could be put towards actually, maybe moving that industry a little bit more forward in the technology side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to put him on the spot, so I won't mention who he is or where I met him, but I do have a friend who is an engineer for Delta, or actually part of the company that Delta has outsourced that responsibility to. And this idea actually was broached to them a few times of, we could get greater reliability and greater scalability if we move to the cloud. And the way that they were saying is, look, it could be hybrid. You could still have everything on premise, but if we put it in the cloud, it gives us the ability to get back up and running immediately while we figure out what happened to the premise installation. And what he got back each time wasn't that they weren't interested because of cost. It was that data is proprietary. And it's that old way of thinking. It cannot leave our campus. It cannot leave our protection. And they're just not convinced in the privacy of the cloud. Cheebert, I thought we were past that.
Yeah, I thought we were too. Especially considering, for God's sakes, even HIPAA is agreeing that the cloud is an inevitability and that you can secure the cloud well enough to meet or exceed HIPAA standards. Heck, there are even specialized clouds available for classified activities. Come on, Delta. This isn't rocket science.
Indeed. Well, gentlemen, let's go ahead and move off of this because it's time for the fun. Last week, I happened to go over to Black Hat and DEF CON. Of course, it's Hacker Summer Camp. It's security professional research nirvana. It's a fun place to meet the people that maybe you only see once a year and to talk about things that are important to you. I did manage to get a couple of interviews that went into the Twit Live special for Black Hat, but I brought out two pieces that I thought that the Twiat Riot might enjoy. Cheebert, we know that the internet is populated by bots, right? And they're not all bad. When I say bots, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just mean events that have been scripted. They're not artificially intelligent, but they are smart enough to know when they should and should not act. And we have both good bots and bad bots. Would you and Lou agree that there's probably more action from bots than there are from actual live people on the internet?
Yeah, I vote yes.
Lou?
Absolutely, especially on Twitter and those types of feeds.
Exactly. I mean, it's what makes the internet useful. But the question becomes, if we live in a world of bots, what happens when those bots get increasingly intelligent and more able to bypass the restrictions that we've placed on them? Well, at Black Hat, I had a talk with the folks from Perimeter X, and this is what they said about the future of advanced bots.
In this era of the internet, there is a natural citizen of this grand network, and that's the bot. That's right, that little bot, that piece of code that can either give us some fantastic features or cause untold damage. That's why I'm standing here with Omri from Perimeter X, who's going to explain the evolution of the bot on the internet. Omri, what is Perimeter X?
Thanks, Padre. So, Perimeter X is a provider of behavioral-based web protection, and we focus on identifying bots and other automatic threats to websites.
Oh, bots have really evolved over the years. I remember the very first bots that went out there, they were sort of inadvertent, they were experimental. And recently they've become quite smart. They're intelligent. They know when to act, when not to act, both the good ones and the bad ones. In your mind, how many generations of bots have we had, and what has been the main differentiator between Gen 1, Gen 2, and so forth?
Great question. So we've been tracking bots for a long time, and we've been able to identify 4 distinct phases of evolution. First generation bots are very simple, but whether there were good bots like the first Google crawler or bad bots, they don't have a sense of context. So they don't keep a session about the user. Very easy to overcome that bot. You put a login, he's not able to log in and maintain the session. Then came second generation bots with a distinct feature of keeping a session, maintaining the cookie, so they can log in and just continue into the website. Third generation bots came in with a real browser. So once you put a CAPTCHA in place, the second generation bots can't do anything to overcome that. Third generation bots are actually based on real browser engines, Chrome, Firefox, but they add a layer of a script engine on top of them. So they can run anything and look like a browser, run JavaScript, render images, render sound. But there's no human being behind them, and they usually run inside data centers or specific location. Still relatively easy to identify them with signatures. Then fourth generation came very recently, last year or two. And these bots, what they do is they go into the user's session. They take over his browser. We really see the convergence of the malware world and the bot world with fourth generation bots, because a fourth generation bot is a malware. It's a malware that infects your computer and is taking over your browser, looking and controlling every click, every session, every cookie that you have, and then it's able to do things like use your Google login to log into other websites. And this is where the scary part comes in. We've seen bots, for example, that control your session. So you are logged into Facebook. They'll take your images, contact details, everything you have on Facebook, and open a fake account on an Eastern European dating site. Why? Because they're getting paid for every user created. Now, you don't even know that. It's being done completely behind the scenes, like malware usually work, but now you have a profile on a dating site in Russia.
Now, there are going to be people who are watching this who are saying, oh, this is that typical cat and mouse game. You know, this security researchers find something, they patch it. The people who want to exploit, they'll find something else and they'll exploit it. But there's more here, because what you've just described is not just the increasing sophistication of bots, but the more targeted nature of bots. And of course, I'm speaking of the malicious bots right now. Yep. The ability to actually target specific accounts, specific, say, social media venues, yep, rather than just releasing a bot into the wild and hoping that it reports back with all the information that it's cached.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give an example for one of the attacks we've seen, a malware infecting millions of people. The malware sits inside your browser as a browser extension. Now, it sees every request you make. So you go to a website, it first checks with the command and control center, do we have any active campaign, any active fraud attack on that website? And they check. We've identified 18,000 sites that they check. And usually a payload would come back. If this is a website that they can run, for example, an affiliate fraud campaign, they would simply block the main window where you just browse to a website. They'll open a hidden window with, again, your session, your user, create a connection to the website, report as if you came in from an affiliate, as you came from a third party, and then close that session and release your main session. You'll continue to the website, complete a purchase. Now, every purchase you make is being attributed to the fraudster, and he's collecting the 7 or 10% out of your purchase. Now, that hurts the merchant, the retailer, in two ways. First, he's paying where he shouldn't be paying, but that's not the big problem. The big problem is that you really came to the website through some other marketing activity. You clicked on an ad, you read a review somewhere, through a partner, and instead of that partner getting the attribution and getting the royalties that he should, that's going to the fraudster. So the website now thinks that third party is not delivering result. They won't use him anymore. They'll think they should be using the affiliate, although that affiliate is not bringing traffic.
Yeah, it's not just a nuisance. That actually, it kind of breaks the business model of advertising on the internet. I mean, if I can have an army of bot-controlled machines who, unknowing to the user, are going to a site to get me hits, to get me links, to get me affiliation credits, then I've basically made the economy useless. I've made those numbers imaginary. Let's go a little bit deeper, because our audience is pretty tech-savvy. Sure. And they're going to look at the keynote address from Dan Kaminsky this morning, who mentioned that we don't compete on security. At least we shouldn't compete on security. And I think bots are a great example of that, where one vendor can't say, ha, 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 you're infested with bots, because those bots are going to be infecting my network. Yep. They're going to be coming after me. What needs to come next in Perimeter X's future? What comes next in the strategy to maybe not eliminate bots, but at least reduce their impact?
Great question. So we are actually trying to look at the bot herders or the attackers as businesses, because they are. This is not a kid in a basement trying to make $1,000. The click fraud or the marketing fraud industry is taking $9 billion a year out of the ad industry. There's a whole organization, crime organization behind it. In our lab, we're running malware for a long period of time. We're seeing the rate of software updates. We're seeing the quality of the software coming out of these companies, and it's great. It's better than most companies. So they employ a lot of developers, product manager, I'm sure, to build these attacks. And we need to look at that and treat them as businesses. So we need to impact their ROI. If you want to take down a business, you need to break his ROI model, meaning make it cost more for him to infect a computer by employing more and better detection, and make it harder to pay him. So today they're collecting the money somewhere. Okay, so you want to hit them on the bottom line and the top line. They won't be able to collect that much revenue, and it's going to be more expensive to actually infect the machine. So it's a combination of products like ours that makes it harder to attack, and then legislation that makes it harder for them to collect the money. If banks stops paying them, there's no business for them.
I love that, because that's the merging of this new technology and the old economy. And the whole idea is, look, you want to stop something, make it unprofitable. And the minute it's unprofitable, people don't develop these anymore. Omri, I know there's a lot more, but Black Hat is a long event. We're going to let you go back out in the wild and spread the word. If they wanted to find out more about you, more about Perimeter X, more about maybe what you could do to consult for them, where should our audience go?
Sure. www.perimeterx.com, same as on my shirt. Very easy. Our Twitter account @PerimeterX. We do a lot of thought leadership, by the way. Our blog at blog.perimeterx.com has a lot of information. We usually roll out at least once a month a description of the attack. What I described, the affiliate fraud attack, is described in great details, including malware code, how it's running, even who is it running on. So go and take a look.
Omri, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you for sharing your company and your vision for a botless future, or at least a malicious botless future. And folks, if you're looking for the future of security, Perimeter X thinks it's all about battle. Bots.
Okay, yeah, that was a bad one. Cheebert, I remember back in Interrupt, 2004, whenever was the first year that we moved over to the Mandalay, Extreme Networks came out with a box that was essentially, it was designed to fight bots, and it was designed to fight malware by making them work. In other words, prove that you're human. I'm gonna send you a tiny bit of work to do, and a regular human would be able to do it quickly. But if you've got a bot that's trying to do this millions and millions of times, it quickly adds up and it starts bogging down your connections. Does that still work, or do we have to move to the whole model of I'm just gonna make it unprofitable for you?
I think it's more the unprofitable, because these bot herders, because they're using basically grid processing to do what they do, man, they got a lot of processing power behind them, and these bot herders can just go rent more.
Yeah.
Was it Silk Road? You could hire for not a whole lot of money, several thousand owned machines.
I remember the last time I checked, I could buy 1 hour of 10 gigabit per second DDoS for like $100. It really wasn't that expensive. No. And I mean, you could take that power and you can basically have it do a particular action and bring anything down. All right, we're going to move on, because bots are fun, but there was something that was way, way more fun. Hey, Lou, have all of your credit cards switched over to chip and pin? To chip and sign?
No, not yet.
Really? Wait. Which card do you have that? Because all my card vendors actually sent me a new card. They had to include the little chip in it. You still have one that's just MagStripe?
Yeah, the Chase Amazon business card doesn't have it yet.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even know that. I thought every one of the major payment processors had demanded that we get a chip. But Cheebert, you're always quick to point out that we may have chip and sign, but that's still not chip and pin, right?
You betcha.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably going to be a while before we get that here in the United States. And even more unfortunately is once we get it here in the United States, there was Rapid7 at Black Hat who showed that it's completely useless.
There are many reasons to push for enhanced security, but very few evoke emotion like this. I'm here with Weston Hecker from Rapid7, who just demonstrated a hack of a next-gen ATM machine. Weston, these next-gen machines are all over Europe, but very few have made it to the United States. Yeah. What have you found in terms of vulnerability?
Well, some of the active relaying of some of the messaging, there's vulnerabilities that come up from the limitations in the actual communication networks in the United States. And they have to be able to access on some of the smaller networks, like where they don't have the ability to get to some of the levels of security that the bigger networks have. So that's one of the things is some of the smaller ones are holding the big ones behind. So, yeah.
In the demonstration, you showed the use of not a skimmer, which we are all accustomed to. We'll have several of them on demonstration at DEF CON, but this one is a shimmer, and it's designed to take the data from the new chip and PIN, or actually in the United States, the PIN cards. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, so basically that gets in between the actual contacts, and there's several point-of-sale attacks that have been done in the wild in the past. People have done demonstrations on this. There's lots of good research on it, but this one was I wondered why nobody went after ATM machines, and I actually went and looked at the attack surface of the actual ATMs and discovered some things that were specific to some of the ATM protocols. So yeah, that's kind of the direction that I went with it, and yeah. So. And
in layman's term, the demonstration essentially showed the use of a shimmer inside of a card machine. So someone would put their card in, do a regular transaction, say at Home Depot or Target, which have adopted the PIN, not the PIN, but the chips side of the card. And then you would replay that at an actual ATM machine. And you've created a device that can do the PIN entry if necessary, and then it just spat out money. Yeah. Tell me, how difficult would this be to correct? Because I know you're not releasing your source code. You're not really showing people your device because this is dangerous. But can it be fixed, or do we have to wait for the next-gen ATM?
Yeah. When I was actually going through some of the research, even being like a hobbyist in this kind of thing, it was something where I came up with like 3 pretty good ideas or solid directions that I would go with. And I think that, people that do this for a living, they're definitely going to come across that kind of stuff, especially when these things are brought up a couple years before it's actually used out in the wild. So, some of the actual, like the shimmers that have been found in the wild, those ones have been used on improper EMV implementations. Like they'll actually make them into, a physical card. So, yeah, so some of those attacks that have been used in the wild are a little bit different. So it's as soon as that low-hanging fruit goes away, this is kind of where the bad guys are going to go. So.
And you even mentioned that you did find a few devices in the wild that had serial numbers. So obviously these are not one-off devices. These are being professionally produced.
Yeah, I forgot where the actual article was. I read it. It was they actually some of the shimmers that they'd come across. They looked like they were actually from the same lot numbers and same batches, which means that they're that's an indication of some kind of fabrication in a professional factory. So that's what the extent that the bad guys are going to. They have engineering backgrounds. They have the technical skills, as you saw with some of the malware stuff that's going on now. It's all professionally made now. So, yeah. Well,
we're just going to go ahead and throw them straight into the presentation that we recorded. But before that, if they wanted to find out more about Rapid7, more about the research that you've been doing, or more about the vulnerabilities that you found, where can they go?
Oh, yeah, just hit us up on rapid7.com. So, yeah, we got tons of information there. We got really good learning if you want to, just catch up on some of the, the latest computer skills. It's a really, really good site. And, a lot of our employees contribute a lot to it. So, yeah, it's not like anything that I've ever found on the internet as far as, the straightaway training. So it's very good stuff. So
we've been speaking with Weston Hecker from Rapid7, who's here to make it rain.
EMV it stands for Euro, MasterCard, Visa, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is going to be a long talk about EMV. It's not. So EMV is the chip card standard that's coming to the U.S. Hooray, U.S. We're finally catching up to the rest of the world. And the idea is that it phases out mag strips. And so mag stripe cards have been the standard in the U.S. for 1 million years, or 50. And the Carter gangs and the criminal activity around mag stripe cards is pretty well established. If I'm running a Carter organization, my goal is to steal mag stripe data, bundle that up, sell it on the dark web, and let somebody else deal with all the cash out, right? Well, with the move to EMV, this kind of bundling and selling much later doesn't really work anymore. EMV transactions are super time sensitive. So instead of stealing EMV data and trying to sell it at a later date, as a criminal attacker, I would need to be able to monetize this in much closer to real time. Now, EMV is definitely more secure than magstripe, but it is not a case where we're going to move to chip and pin and the criminals are going to throw up their hands and say like, oh, no, I'm done, I'm out, I can't do magstripe anymore. Absolutely not. What Weston has found through looking around at kind of like what the attack surface is looking like on EMV, as you've probably heard at every black hat over the last 5 years, the criminals are definitely moving there. And so we have now a scenario where a criminal organization can insert not a skimmer for magstripe, but a shimmer in a device much like this, a POS system that we're all familiar with. You just kind of drop it in there. Inside such a POS would be a shimmer that sits in between the card and the point-of-sale system. That shimmer is in fact itself a computer. It is connected to the internet. It modulates the electrical impulses from the EMV chip, shoots them over the internet to a device such as this one, and then those get replayed back out into a card that is capable of receiving this data and also is capable of like impersonating the EMV data. That the unsuspecting victim has now supplied in the chip and pin device. So, as you know, if you've tried to use chip and pin lately, sometimes it takes apparently forever, really more like 15, 20 seconds. And it's that kind of like time lag that the attack takes advantage of. This card is sitting there, apparently doing nothing, but in fact it's getting controlled by the ATM on the other side. So let's go over like each individual component that's behind here, because as you can see, it's got this attractive out of order sign. You can't actually see any of the electronics that have been laid in underneath. This is like kind of the point, right? Like this is one style of attack. Weston went through the handheld device where someone who's running the cash out would walk up to any ATM and do that. This is a more permanent solution. This would last, maybe overnight or a day or two before the owner notices that someone has put their ATM into an out of order state. So maybe let's go through so I have this blockchain of EMV transaction data that's very time sensitive. So what happens next? Like you have the Android phone. Let's start with Android and just kind of go through that.
Yeah. So basically, after they've
come on over.
Their information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after they've entered their information onto their webpage, it'll give a lot of information where you can watch the blockchain for those specific events that you actually... Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this thing will actually, the phone will actually look for its specific events and delimiting characters that it actually set when it purchased the transaction. So it's something it'll look for those specific figures and then know that that's it's time to start grabbing that transaction data, and it'll actually connect directly to the shim device. So it's a direct connection from the shim device to the actual... point of sale or the ATM machine that is doing the cashing out. And it'll actually, the initial communication between the EMV chip is actually not on the point of sale terminal. It'll actually be passed off to the ATM's information. So,
well, let's just kick it off.
Yeah, definitely.
So while Weston plugs in a thing, which is a technical term. Imagine then, like I said, that there is this cloud of EMV data along with PIN information, which is all captured by the man-in-the-middle device. And so now the ATM or the Android phone that's sitting underneath here is catching that data. It's transmitting it to an EMV kind of replicator card, where that EMV device that's actually kind of parked in the slot is simulating the real EMV chip that's somewhere else on the point of sale system. And then there's also a couple of microcontrollers in there that's controlling some servos that are actually punching the buttons on the pin pad. And so it's picking up pin data. It's selecting how much cash to withdraw. This is all, by the way, mediated by the kind of fraud flags that are transmitted along with the EMV. And then it's just going to start spitting out cash as each transaction kind of gets flagged by the software running on the Android device. And then just kind of keeps going, apparently forever. In reality, if this were like a organized crime kind of situation, whoever's running the cash out, they would have like a block of time, say, or they're part of like the whole shimming operation. So I think with that, let's just get out of the way. And I think this will just keep going until either it runs out of cash or the fraud alert systems that are actually all still running, and it's very real, finally alerts that this ATM is behaving oddly.
That was a really fun demo, especially with the cash being spit out into the middle of the room. I will say, though, unfortunately, it was movie cash. It looked like real $100 bills. They felt like real $100 bills, but on the back, they said this is a movie prop. I guess that's what they use in Hollywood. Oh, there is plenty more from Black Hat and from DEF CON. Be sure to watch the Twit Live special for Black Hat, and be sure to watch Twit TV because we've sprinkled in little bits and pieces of DEF CON across our various pieces of programming. But you know, it's an event that I love doing each and every single year, and unfortunately, I will not be there next year. Cheebert, Lou, do either of you want to go to Vegas in my place?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I can wear clerics.
Okay, maybe you could go in your regular clothes, but I'll find out. I'll loan you some clerics if you want it. Gentlemen, you know what? We're going to call a close to it because they are just waiting to disassemble the set behind me, and I'm going to let them get to it. I thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for just spending some time with the Twiat Riot. Cheebert, if they wanted to know what you were up to, where should they go?
I am still using ADV NETLAB, Advanced Net Lab on Twitter. I actually have Cheebert Hawaii. There is actually a Cheebert, but it's a female, and I think in Thailand. I'm not sure.
That doesn't help.
So I guess I'm not going to be Cheebert anytime soon.
We should petition.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, I'm going to be doing some work at Pearl Harbor, trying to get some new smart meters up and running. And I'm finally working on getting smart meters on the UH Manoa campus running, which is
very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool indeed. And what about you, Lou? Where can people find you, and what are you up to these days?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter, LouMM, and all of the CRM work that I do, you can find at MicrosoftCRM.com.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me once again. We'll have you back, of course, each and every single week. Well, of course, not next week because we're going to be moving the studio. But the week after that, we're back onto the regular rotation. And, of course, thanks to you, to the person who comes back each and every single week. We couldn't do Twite without you. And, again, you have spent another hour listening to the best dang podcast in the universe, Enterprise Podcast, that is. That's according to 9 out of 10 ohmed ATM machines. We want to thank you in the only way we can, and that is by making it easier for you to get all of your Twiat goodness when you need it. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiat. If you go there, you'll find all of our back episodes, as well as a subscription link, so you can get the version of your choice in your device of choice. If you don't want to miss Twiat each and every single week, just remember it'll be automatically downloaded and waiting for you when you've got time to listen to the guys just kind of mess around. Also, don't forget that you can find me on my Twitter account at twitter.com/PadreSJ. If you follow me, you'll see what I'm doing when I'm not hosting Twite or when I'm not hosting Know-How, and you'll also be able to suggest guests for future episodes. Speaking of suggesting guests and topics for future episodes, don't forget that Cheebert is actually our super producer now, and he's been doing a fantastic job. He's been absolutely killing it. Cheebert, if they wanted to suggest a guest or a topic, what's the best way to do it?
I've been taking tons of tweets from guys on the, guys and gals on the on Twitter. JJ to the 4884 has been doing some. Some of the guys at in Florida, I don't know, just tons. I'm still trying to gather them all up. We've had a lot. I'm actually talking to a lot of cool corporations: Cisco, VMware, Microsoft. We're all of those we're finally getting on to the full press rotation. So we've got a better chance at getting product managers and people like that so that we can have some really, really hot topics. I'm actually lining up Cisco Tropo to talk about their IoT solutions.
Woot. Okay, well, we've got lots coming down the Twiat pipeline. Now, don't forget that we film or record, or whatever it is that we do in the digital age, every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. Just go to live.twit.tv. You'll be able to see the pre-show, the post-show, and everything in between. And as long as you're watching live, jump into our live chat room at irc.twit.tv, and you can participate in the show. I've got a little screen right down there, and Cheebert's very active in the chat room. It's a good way to get your questions asked when we have guests, or just to mess around when we're talking about something that we love dearly. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, saying, if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.